Took me ages to do this.
Meeting is now streaming on YouTube. We're live already, Marissa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So let me just check it, actually. Post the link, or you can check it. Just go to the video on YouTube, and then.
Yeah, it's working.
Cool. Well, you want to shut
hold on. No.
You obviously want to shut the tab down on YouTube, right? So that it's not talking to you.
Okay, I've closed it.
Cool. Well done.
So do we need to share that link?
Well, not for the people who are here, because they're here, right? Maybe you want to put it on LinkedIn or something quickly. We just got 3 minutes. I'll back in 1 second. So we're everything good?
Yeah.
Any problems? Yeah, maybe post it there where Jacqueline just shared a message. If not, if you can't make it to the Zoom, this will be streamed on YouTube. Someone's already asking for it. They missed the launch.
Is that good?
So do you want to give Jacqueline the link so that she can share it, or?
Yeah, I have just put it on there.
Maybe put into the people that are asking there in the chat on LinkedIn for
okay.
the Zoom link. Maybe just.
Well, I'm going to put it here first. Sorry, because I can't. There we go. It's also, I've just put it on YouTube as well. Oh, on LinkedIn as well.
Cool. So 1 minute. Are we all ready to go? I don't know what questions you're going to ask me, but we'll go for it anyway. I never saw those.
What do we do?
Everything ready?
My question is, sorry, what do we do about like calling people to share, right? We said we might have some
chat. Open chat.
No, but like specific people that we said we want to maybe call on.
Jacqueline?
I would say
maybe Jacqueline, you could post a message to them in chat or something.
Yeah, I will see. I think I would say leave it open. Does anyone want to? But if I spot someone that I think can, I will private message.
Yeah. Shall I admit all?
Yeah, sure. We're on. I think we're live on YouTube now, anyway. So.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm admitting.
Can somebody do screen grabs as well?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll do.
Oh, and recording, right?
Yeah.
Great. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Not possible to see everyone at the same time, but
definitely not. How many do we have so far?
Around 30.
Okay. Cool.
30 people. Maybe we'll give it another minute or two.
Yeah.
Before we start, we are live.
We are live on YouTube. Hi, everybody. It'd be great if you could turn your cameras on if you're happy to be seen. We do like to see faces.
Hi. Okay, just a couple of more minutes. Wow, we have people.
Hello, Darwin.
From France as well.
The worlds are converging.
Did I hear my name?
Hi, everyone. Do feel free to make yourselves seen if you feel less shy today. We're on YouTube, so your faces will be seen, hopefully.
We start?
Yep, are we streaming? I hope we are. Can anybody see if we're streaming?
We want to mute, maybe mute everyone,
Yeah.
so as to not get background.
Yeah. So we'll get going. Sorry, I have some drilling in the back of my house. Welcome, everyone. We'll get started. I think we've got a packed agenda today, so we'd like to get started. It'd be great if you could turn your cameras on. We'd love to see you if you can, just to let you know that this is recorded and you're on YouTube Live, hopefully. We've got a slightly bigger group than we expected, so we've kind of adjusted our program a little bit based on that, but hopefully it will still be an engaging session, and we're hoping that it's participatory and interactive. So we will put you on mute to start with, and unless you have awful drilling in the background like I do, you'll feel free to take yourselves off mute if there's a point, you know, if there's points of interaction where you want to join in or have something to say. So yeah, I'll get going. So good afternoon, good evening, good morning, welcome. Thank you for everyone who's registered and joined us today. We've got registrations from Asia, from Europe, from Africa, from the Middle East and the Americas. So we're really excited that we've managed to spread this event further than just the region, although that's also equally exciting. So we really appreciate the time you've taken to join with us, and we understand that, you know, there's lots of events online, but we really appreciate that you've chosen to spend the time with us today just to hear more about systems innovation. So I'm going to give a brief intro to myself. I am Marissa, and I am the Systems Innovation Lead for Singapore. And with me today is my co-host Anna, who also happens to be my business partner. So we are here under the name of Systems Innovation Singapore, but synergistically and complementarily, it's also very aligned with the work that we do. We are obviously co-founders of that organization, and we've got a lot to share, so hopefully you'll be willing to listen. And just a brief background for me and my journey into systems innovation. I kind of grew up between two worlds, and very much at home it was kind of Buddhist and Taoist and Confucianist, and actually later found out it's very much aligned with a lot of the work and thinking around systems innovation. Or systems thinking, but my training and background was more in kind of management, and I found that there was a huge cognitive dissonance for me when I started to kind of go into the world of work. So what I actually kind of took a break from my work and had a quarter-life crisis, where I realised that I needed some kind of resolution there, and through that I came across permaculture, and what you'll find out perhaps in your explorations is very much links to systems thinking and the ideas there. So I found that body of work quite difficult to access when I looked for it back in 2010. And so actually I started to explore more. And when I came across the work of systems innovation, I actually was taken aback by how accessible it was. So that's kind of my journey into systems innovation. I reached out to Joss, who was very kind of open, and this is why we took the opportunity to kind of get involved with setting up this hub here in Singapore. You can reach myself or Anna on LinkedIn as well, although many of you probably know us already. So if there are new people to meet, please do connect with us there. So just a brief introduction for today and the flow. We'll talk briefly about the SI platform. We'll then spend a few minutes with Joss, who's the founder of the platform, and meet the rest of the Singapore team. Next, we'll go into what a system is and systems innovation, and then a little brief overview of complex systems, wicked problems, and why it's so difficult to change them. And then we'll have our guest of honor, so to speak, who's Bjorn. Many of you probably know him, and of those of you who don't, you will get to know him. And finally, we'll hear a little bit more about the hub in Singapore. So that's the kind of agenda for today. So we will be using Slido. So if we want to make it as interactive as possible, given the numbers that are coming in and the kind of session today. So please have your devices ready for interaction, and the QR code will appear on the screen to scan. If you don't have the device, you're welcome to go to slido.com and type in the code 25053. So just to start, we would like to get a feel for who's in the room and really to understand what your level of kind of experience or understanding of systems thinking, complexity, and kind of systems practice is. So if you could take out your devices and rate your own kind of your self-assessment, I guess, of systems thinking and systems innovation. We'd love to see intermediate. Okay, we can see how many of you are answering. So it'd be great if you could dig deep to share more there. None of the questions will be too difficult, hopefully. Okay, so we've got a lot of kind of intermediates who have got practical application. Joss, I'm wondering where you're answering this, given that you created the platform.
Having problems with my internet at the moment. 1 second, Marissa. I think it's just loading.
It won't show us your actual answer, don't worry.
Yeah. So let's try that again.
Okay, we've got about 53 people in the room, so hopefully you'll all take a moment to answer. We won't be cross-referencing this or checking, so no worries if you feel shy and modest about your experience and knowledge. Okay, so good. We've got a number of kind of intermediates, some novices, some with fundamental. And do we have any recognized experts in the room? Well, I think we have a small percentage, which is good. It might just be Joss and Jacqueline. I haven't looked at the actual number of people in the room who turned up. Okay, great. Okay, so as you can see, actually, we've got quite a spread here, which is good. We've even got some very kind of early complexity curious people. So that's really good. So, just to say that, today's session, we're really hoping that it's not about the expert, although that's very important. What we're really wanting to see is that there's a wide spread of people who are interested in this topic and will really get to grips with learning more. And some of the stuff we talk about may be simplified and may not have enough detail if you're an expert. And some of it may be actually really new to you and you may have difficulty grasping some of the terminology. So just bear with us. We're trying to get a base level and kind of common and shared understanding of that. And more. This is just an intro today, and more detail will be obviously shared when we start learning or through the work of the hubs as well and the platform. So the platform itself is Systems Innovation. It's an e-learning platform. And I would like to stop here because I would like then for Joss to come in and for us to meet him and for him to share a little bit more about himself. So Joss, can you, I met you a year ago when I came across one of your amazing courses, a short one, and I was really blown away by the content and the accessibility. Can you just share kind of like, to start with, a little bit about yourself?
Sure. It's really great to be here and see so many people, actually. Particularly, it's been, as you say, almost a year, Marissa, us setting this up, maybe 9 months or so. So it's really great to get started and do our first event here. So a bit about myself. I think my background I characterize it as kind of the intersection of, say, design. I studied art and design at college, and technology, kind of transitioned from graphic design and kind of art and design and visual design more into information technology and web design and more into a kind of technical realm. So over the course of about 10 years after leaving school, moved from art and design more towards technology, where I eventually discovered complexity theory as a way to kind of help me understand very complex information systems at that time. Over time, I came to discover it's kind of a lot more than information technology. It really kind of applies to a lot of things that are going on out there in the world that are very relevant. And I discovered that these ideas have huge kind of relevance particularly for people who are, say, out there doing things, should we say? Because the way I discovered them was a lot in academia, kind of maths and science and computer science and physics and so on. and just kind of saw that gap between all those kind of powerful ideas there in academia and what's actually needed out there in the world, particularly for, say, management and policymakers and designers and so forth, who didn't really have access to these ideas in a way, as you mentioned. So set up our websites as a platform, is an e-learning website for communicating those ideas in a way that's kind of non-technical people could understand, and also kind of trying to make them actionable, should we say, not just because they are quite theoretical and quite abstract. If you encounter them in academia, so trying to take them, and that means kind of bringing them down to earth, and how do they actually apply in different contexts, in business management, in whatever it is, economics or finance and so forth. So spent about 4 or 5 years kind of mass producing video courses, and they've been pretty popular. They're watched about 1 million times, by about 1 million people every year. So being somewhat successful in trying to reach people and make those ideas more widely known and more accessible. So that's been kind of the journey of the past 6 years since we set up systems innovation. And then more recently, we kind of pivoted more. Over that time, we started building up a kind of community around this because we were reaching a lot of people. And then about 2 years ago, kind of pivoted more into that community aspect to it, right? How do we stop just being a little startup that's kind of pushing out videos to everyone, and start thinking about how we activate and enable that community, and moving more from the kind of theoretical complexity stuff more into this world of systems innovation, systems change that we're talking about today, in terms of how do we actually take those ideas and, use them towards actually changing systems and really tackling complex challenges, which is really kind of where I'm at this stage. I don't want to spend the rest of my life kind of teaching and talking about this stuff. I want to think about how we actually make it happen. And it's not that easy. We aren't so good at it. So I'd say that's where we are at the moment in this journey. It's a lot what these hubs are about, and the network is about. How do we actually do this thing we call systems change?
And can you tell us kind of, is there anything more within the structure of what you've set up that you can talk about?
Anything more in the structure that I set up?
Yeah. So you've got the platform, right? And then the hubs.
Yeah. So, like I said, the community started emerging about 2 years ago. We started building it online, and then we did a conference. It was kind of a random experimentation in Barcelona about 2 years ago, where we got everyone together, and we just tried what it was like doing stuff offline for the first time. Actually, everything had been virtual, everything had been kind of information and global and everything. And this was the first time we got about 150 people together in Barcelona, and in a co-working space, and we did a 2-day conference, and it was great. People really enjoyed it. Actually, it was a really great vibe about the whole thing. So really, that was the first time that we really kind of managed to really activate the community. You can have a community, particularly an online community, and it could be thousands of people like ours is, but it can just kind of sit there like a cloud. You're not really sure what it is, but you got to activate it in some way.
Yeah.
And doing that conference was really the first time that we really turned it into, or really kind of saw it come alive, right? And you saw people connecting with each other and the value they got out of it and so forth, and the sense of kind of community and creating a movement and so forth. So that was an important moment. And then we did another one in Barcelona, here in London, like 6 months later. And again, that was really energizing and really good. We got the whole community here together in London of systems change and so systems changes and so on. And people really enjoyed that again. But there's kind of a problem with that. You have a one-off event and you fly people around. It's really exciting. But then what happens afterwards, right? People kind of go home and there's no kind of momentum or anything. And that's kind of where the hub concepts that we're talking about today sprung out of. How do we create kind of localized communities offline that are actually building upon themselves, right? Instead of just one-off things, they're actually developing a network and growing a network, building those connections and trying to essentially develop some kind of ecosystem. So the structure of the community now, we have that e-learning platform, still delivering a lot of value in terms of those video courses every day. We have the online community, and then the hubs as kind of localized spaces or extensions of those. And then there's also cross-cutting kind of themes within which we explore what systems innovation means in finance, in governance, in food systems, so on and so forth.
And just, I guess, lastly, what's your kind of bigger goal or vision for the hubs or for SI itself, or both?
definitely for the hubs. I mean, the network is definitely about how do we actually do this in practice. And I think we know systems change. It's not one big thing, you know, that just kind of happens and that's it. It's really many small kind of parallel changes, and it has to be, I think, embedded in something. It has to be kind of local. I think we know that there's this kind of thing in the time we live in between the local and the global, and those things have to be interconnected. So for the network, it's really thinking about how do you build these local communities? And I think of it a lot around innovation and innovation ecosystems, creating an infrastructure, a platform for them to be able to try and change the systems they form part of, right? And we've got many cities here, Mumbai, Mexico, Sao Paulo, so on and so forth. They have huge kind of complex challenges, right? Around water, around poverty and so forth. And how do they actually try and tackle those, or bring those people together, give them the right ideas and so forth in their location to tackle those problems, and then also trying to get that kind of synergy across that collaboration across the network also. So it's trying to do systems change, but not like one big thing. It's a small kind of bottom-up thing, should we say.
Great, thanks, Joss. I've just been told the YouTube live isn't working. I'm not sure why, sorry. That might be something for another time. I'm not able to kind of grab this at the moment. So hopefully
we're recording on Zoom, so
okay, great.
afterwards now.
Great, thanks. Sorry to everyone who missed that. Okay, so I just want to spend the next few minutes introducing. So Josh, you've gone through some of the reasons behind the hub. I mean, some numbers there. You know, we've got 6,000 members on the site apparently, 20 hubs, 4 million video views and counting, I'm sure. And I know you're working on kind of transitioning that platform, but also kind of where is the interest at the moment, right? And maybe this needs to be updated, but this is kind of some of the data we have on where the level of interest lies for this kind of thinking and these ideas. So our next section just talks about a little bit about the team behind the hub, and there's myself, who, as I said, made contact with Joss about a year ago, and the team here have been kind of together and learning and kind of aligning and sort of exploring since around June last year. And here you have some of the kind of organizers and early explorers who have contributed their time and effort so far. So I'm going to just introduce them briefly, and perhaps it'd take a couple of minutes, a couple of sentences to talk a little bit about themselves. So Jacqueline is currently a consultant and based actually in the UK, but from Singapore. She's a consultant for herself, but she also used to spent many years at Volan. So Jacqueline, do you just want to spend a minute or so to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, sure, I'll try and keep it to 30 seconds. So excited to be here because I'm Singaporean and I kind of spent the first half of my career in Singapore working on sort of social enterprise, families who are kind of have facing multiple challenges, etc. I was a social worker by training, and I just wish I had access to all of this back then. But as Marissa was saying, the second half of my career, I've been working more in sustainability type topics based here in the UK. And I met Joss exactly as he was saying at the London conference. I can't remember exactly when it was now, but that alongside a few other opportunities, I feel so privileged to be working in the system space now as a coach, facilitator, and a consultant as well. I'm really pleased to be here and supporting from afar.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Supporting in many ways. Thank you. Is Jan here today? Jan has been invited. I don't know if she's here.
I'm here.
Yay! Thanks, Jan. Thanks for joining. So Jan is a seasoned expert in coaching and facilitating, and has worked with organisations such as UNDP. So Jan, you've been dipping in and out as well. So do you want to kind of spend a second introducing yourself?
Yeah, really excited about this launching here in Singapore, and to see so many people join this launch as well. My work has a lot to do with social impacts, and I've been in social entrepreneurship. I've been in social entrepreneurship in the past 15 years, and also working with a lot of multinationals and UN agencies and this type of system innovation, system change journey. And I recently started to work as a program director of Basal Pyramids Hub, based in Singapore. It's a kind of accelerator platform to support startup to design business and global poverty. And we recently launched our program on social system innovation with National University of Singapore Enterprise, and to support some students to understand the system better and to work as a system innovator. And actually in the coming months, we will be launching a series of events around foods and environment sustainability, and it's called The Lives. And we're keen to work with a lot of system innovators here. And let me know if you're interested to learn more about that.
Thank you, Jan. Thanks for joining us. So next we have Garrett. Garrett, are you here today with us?
I am.
Thank you, Garrett. Thank you.
Sure.
So do you want to, Garrett was trained, I think, in law and accounting, if I'm not wrong.
You're not wrong.
And an executive coach and climate change leader. And you're currently working as a transformation lead. So if you can just share a little bit about yourself, that would be great.
Thank you. You pretty much summed it up there, Marissa. So like Jacqueline and Jan, yes, I'm a coach and I'm a facilitator. I do currently work in the area of transformation design with a firm called Awaken Group, but I also do other sort of work in the public space, working with the communities, environmental advocacy groups like Mother Earth Toastmasters Club and some others. But I run systems thinking workshops. In fact, just yesterday was running one in the morning, involved with NVPC, which is the National Voluntary Philanthropic Council community. Anyway, just really feel like there's a real space for this as more and more parts of the community and business and government start to understand the uses of systems thinking and how to innovate in systems. I think it'll become more and more important or more and more popular. And so this is a great time to launch the Singapore Hub for Systems Innovation, for the Systems Innovation Hub. So glad to be part of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Garrett. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Jacqueline. There are a number of other people who I think are here, who have kind of dipped their toes in over the last year and expressed interest and willingness to contribute. So hopefully we'll have more contact and kind of opportunity to interact there. So I'm now going to hand over to also Anna, who will introduce herself. And since we're here to talk about systems, she'll also give us a short overview of what a system is and what systems innovation is. So Anna, would you like to take the floor or the screen?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. My name is Anna. In my background, I'm a scientist. I worked across different disciplines in biology, chemistry, and biophysics for many years. And when I started working in sustainability, I actually realized that a lot of the understanding approaches and solutions are highly fragmented and very simplified. And what I realized that what is really missing is the understanding and a view of the world, that of the complex system that it is, and through understanding this complexity, adapting the approaches, how we trying to tackle complex challenges in sustainability. And so this is where I thought that being part of Systems Innovation Hub is a great way to spread this kind of knowledge and understanding, and also learn from others and collaborate with others. And with that, I'm going to try to say a few words about the system to establish kind of a common understanding here within the audience. So a system is a set of different elements, agents, agencies, nodes, parts that has a boundary, and it is highly interconnected and interdependent. And through these parts working together, we get the emergence of a global pattern of organization that is capable of functioning as a coherent whole. Such a system, such a set is also dynamic and evolving. And I really like an example given by Draper Kaufman, who was a faculty in Houston University and the author of the Introduction to Systems Thinking back already in the 1980s, where he said if dividing the cow in two doesn't give you two smaller cows, you might end up with a lot of hamburgers, but what you will lose is an essential wholeness and the function of a cow as a living system that, among other things, is capable of transforming grass into milk. And this is what we mean when we say a function as a coherent whole, which is usually this addition. It's much more than addition of different behaviors of various parts. And there are many different systems that exist out there, and some of them are simple, such as an example of this set of cogwheels. In simple systems, we have one correct answer and one way of getting to that answer. We also have a complicated system. If we put this set of cogwheels into a larger organized car engine, then we will have, again, one answer, but a number of different ways of getting to that answer. However, if a system such as automobile industry is what we're looking at, then it is definitely a highly complex system where we have many different outcomes and many different ways of reaching those outcomes. And if we add a word adaptive to it, then we get an adaptive complex system that is really, when we create whatever changes, any change within that system, then the answers, the outcomes will change with it. And so some of the characteristics of complex systems include that they have multiple parts, they're highly interconnected, and they're highly interdependent. And I think one of the most elusive characteristics of a complex system is that the cause and effect in such systems are often distant in time and space. And one example that I think can be easily understood is if we look in our own body and we consume over years sugars and carbohydrates. Well, we might not feel any negative impacts right away, but over a period of time, one might imagine that it will result in dental cavities, obesities, heart attack, diabetes. And so our body is certainly also a complex system. And since so many people are present today, it will be interesting to see, to know what kind of systems do you have in your lives, or you can maybe share with us. So please go again to the poll via Slido.
You mean complex systems, right?
Complex, sorry, what did I say?
Systems, yeah.
An example of complex system, yes. Okay. So the code is 25053 if you go to slido.com. Is it working for everyone?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I think it's a hard question to answer.
Okay, great. We start seeing some, yes, anatomy of the body, professional network. Family is a complex system. Oh yeah.
Nice.
Very complex. Detrimentally complex. Sometimes financial markets. City.
My kids' education choices. Me.
Brain.
Yeah, that's the one. Peter Senge always gives that example of the family as because everyone knows, everyone has a family, right? And they know that it's the interdependence and it's the dynamics are constantly kind of changing in families, right?
Someone said my kids' education choices.
Only in Singapore.
Culture, yes. Definitely people, everything related to nature and people. So our entire world is one huge interconnected, interdependent complex system. consisting of other interconnected, interdependent subsystems. Thank you. Thank you. That's all brilliant. Learning, garden community. Thank you. So now that we've got some understanding, common understanding of complex system, what is then system innovation? What do we mean when we say it? And why do we need system innovation? So we hear a lot this word innovation everywhere. And actually just the other day, I saw a minivan passing by with it writing on it, innovative bug busters. So truly innovation is everywhere. But when we talk about systems, let's take an example of energy system. A lot is happening there. We've seen changes from fluorescent and incandescent light into LEDs. We see development of power storage batteries or electric vehicle batteries for electric vehicles evolving almost every day. And of course, solar panels and wind turbines. But all of these are parts still within the same energy system that is more or less linear, we could say, that where producers of energy to distribute the energy into the grid, and then the grid distributes into the consumers. But if we were to talk about systems innovation in that context, then we might think about changing the grid from being linear into non-linear and distribute it between enabling producers and consumers to interact, kind of peer-to-peer relationships. Another great example, I think particularly relevant in Singapore, is financial system. We see a lot of innovative financial products, see a lot of new mobile apps, and such an ease of borrowing money and lending money, as well as trading algorithms. But again, it is all concentrated within one system, central system that is governed by single currency. And so innovation for such a system could look like shifting finance into being more distributed, more democratized, and having multiple currencies instead, which will help the system to be more resilient to shocks. So if we are to describe in one sentence what system innovation is, we could say that it is a way for society for us to fulfill societal needs. And past examples can include transition from horse and carriage transportation into the automobiles, or industrial revolution. These fundamentally changed how we fulfill societal needs back in the days. And so with that, kind of, we know now what is system innovation. And I think maybe some of you have in your minds a question, oh, why would we do system innovation? And I'm glad you're asking, because now Marissa will share with us why would we want to do system innovation.
Thanks, Anna. So we think that systems innovation is needed when at least two conditions apply. And the first is when society faces systemic challenges, which require a systemic response. And the second is when society has a systemic opportunity to create new kinds of systems. And either one of these factors on their own can create the conditions for systems innovation. But when they're combined, the need for systems innovation becomes even more compelling. So currently, I mean, what is a complex system and what is a wicked problem? Well, currently, society faces plenty of pressing problems, and many of them could be tackled by incremental improvement or piecemeal reform. But what makes a challenge systemic and so need of systems innovation as a response is another question we want to answer. So we see, again, two kind of situations. One when the challenges are stuck and there's been no significant change in the outcomes despite investment over a long period of time. And an example of that might be, say, the continuous food shortages or food security issues in various parts of the world. And the second condition is really when there are challenges that are new and growing in a way that the current systems are not designed to deal with. even if they're expanded. And a good example of that perhaps might be the aging population, and that puts pressures on families, on care providers, and the health and pension systems. Or even beyond that, the pressure on kind of many other systems due to the concentration and inequality in distribution of wealth that sees just over 2,000 billionaires in the world having more wealth than 4.6 billion people. So, I mean, for us, we'd like to think about, I mean, what is that in terms of complexity in our world? And for those of us who can remember, the 1980s were simple years. There was no such thing as a personal computer, there was no internet, and there were no broadband connections. And they were pretty dark times without those things. But we, you know, it's kind of simple. We take photos, we got them developed in a specialized shop. And then if we wanted to kind of pass them on, we would just send them by post to our relatives. And I guess roughly half of the 4.4 billion people on Earth were either so poor that they were cut off from the rest of humanity, or they lived in regimes that were so repressive that no outside communication was possible. But today we're kind of in environments in which things that were so isolated from one another 40 years ago are connected in a myriad of ways, and often with kind of unexpected and unknown results. And that's because there's been a host of technological and sociological changes that occurred after that period. And that could be things like the digitization of massive amounts of information, the decreasing cost of computing power, the ongoing advances in healthcare, which then results in a longer life expectancy and a larger aging population. And there are many more of these. And though these kind of great things have created many, many good things, they also created some very wicked problems. So what are wicked problems? The scientific and technological development has enabled us to progress faster and kind of more than our systems have been able to adapt to or handle. And in the last couple of decades, we've seen an unprecedented increase in global interconnectedness, interconnectivity, and therefore the rise of complexity. And this complexity in turn gives rise to wicked problems. Now, the thing about wicked problems is that it's really about the system structure and not the parts. So systemic challenges are kind of more deep-rooted, and they're persistent, they're connected and structural. And they make themselves felt in very different ways that perhaps we're not used to experiencing. One of the most kind of more powerful ways is often through a crisis and that kind of crisis will threaten to engulf the public systems that we as society depend on. So COVID-19 has been a systemic crisis, as I'm sure everyone here knows. And so was the financial crisis of 2008, as another example. The impact there was not just on a single component, but really on a kind of, and not even on a single subsystem, but kind of much wider. So wicked problems can be seen as kind of new kinds of challenges that are highly complex, they're systemic, they emerge from the system structure, and they can't really be separated out from each other or different parts, and they're just not amenable to being solved through a normal linear approach. So after describing kind of some of the kind of characteristics of wicked problems, we'd like you to go to Slido and see if you can think of some of the wicked problems in our world today, or that you're aware of. So please go to scan the QR code and try that and go on there to give you the poverty, yeah, interdependency, climate change, yeah. Poverty's got a big one, nice. Not that poverty's nice. Global warming, yeah. So we're seeing 2 or 3 of them that keep kind of pushing themselves to the kind of forefront of what we're thinking about, and with these word clouds, they will kind of grow in size as the number of people kind of all kind of vote on that. So yeah, inequality, we've got quite a few, despite the fact that we are more technologically advanced than we've ever been as a civilization, in theory. And it would be really interesting. I know there's a number of people here who work in systems change and wicked problems in particular. And I'd really like to see if there's anyone here who's in the room today now who would be willing to speak a little bit about some of the wicked problems, spend a minute or so telling everyone more about the wicked problems that they deal with or that their work deals with. And it's kind of an open floor if you can kind of be a little bit succinct. We know that, who's here? Stephanie, are you here with us today? Could you share a little bit about the work that you've been doing?
Stephanie Baiki raised a hand.
Hello?
Oh, Stefan, sorry.
Oh, okay, shall we have Stephanie and then we can have Stefan? Stephanie, are you there?
Sorry, just in a co-working space and
Don't have the connection.
Stephanie, are you there? No?
Why don't we hear from Stefan and then...
Yeah, Stefan, why don't you, sorry, Stephanie, we've not hearing you. Stefan, would you share a little bit about some of the wicked problems that you deal with in your work? Or
Yeah, actually, thanks for inviting me. Yeah, right now we're working on a project on efficiency and bureaucracy in the European institution and public organizations, and it's definitely a wicked problem. I mean, it has all the characteristics that you explained, and what I find very interesting is that the way we approach it is definitely not the most logic one, the one that would appear like the way to do it. And actually it's kind of counterintuitive. We need to be ready for very emergent situations. And also, I think it's very important to dare do stuff which we've never done. And one of the guys in my team, one of the person in my team invited Dave Snowden yesterday, for a call. And the guy said, yeah, let's talk, And then at the end of the meeting, we said, would you be willing to help us? And he said, yeah, of course, anything, anytime.
wow.
So,
sorry, just for those who don't know, Dave Snowden is one of the leading authorities on complexity management, right? Just to give a little context to some people.
And it's Welsh, so he's very happy
He's Welsh.
to help new projects. And so what I mean by this is really to deal with wicked problems, we need to be able to face, all the all unexpected, and it's really okay.
Yeah.
But I guess,
Great.
if you don't mind,
Hast du deine Sachen fertig? Du machst mich traurig, wirklich. Ich verstehe das nicht.
Sorry.
Ich verstehe es
Claudia.
nicht.
Claudia, you're...
Oh, sorry.
just to jump in there, maybe 1 second. I mean, about bureaucracy and wicked. I think the key characteristic of wicked problems is they're systemic. It's not one part of the system, as you said. It's kind of distributed across the system. If you think about bureaucracy, it's kind of an incentive. There's a set of incentives, isn't it, that we all experience in that system, which kind of makes it, when you go to change your bureaucracy, it becomes very difficult because all the agents in the system have their local incentives and their own metrics, and it's not one person that you got to change. It's actually kind of the whole set of incentives across the whole system that makes it so difficult to change. Yeah.
Thanks, Joss. Should we have one more? Should we have one more before we move on? Just it'd be good to hear from one other person.
You have
who do we have?
Robert Lowe. Robin Lowe? No.
Oh yeah. So hi, I'm Robin Lowe. I actually work with refugees and disaster relief, and I find that the way we deal with disasters, it's sort of a disaster as well, because we treat refugees, we treat disaster survivors as victims, and we often see like big organizations just ignore them and think that they cannot contribute and they cannot support the system in any way. And a lot of ways of just dealing with them is just a waste of resource, which is very limited. And when you think about refugees, the current refugee situation in Europe, I mean, a few years ago, and now it's still there. Syrian refugees, I've met a lot of them in Macedonia and in Paris and in Zurich. And many of them actually have college degrees. Why are we treating them as, unskilled labor? And why are we preventing them from working? So I think there's a lot of things that we need to address, and labels. Again, it's a very complex system. But I think people need to view it in a different way and not just trying to help. Because like when you donate money and you try to do it because it's you think it's the right thing to do, it sometimes create a bigger problem of waste and inefficiency. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Robin. Joss, did you have something you wanted to say on that?
Yeah, well, I just want to say about that, because it gets the idea of changing the system structure. Like the reason we have a kind of goes back to the bureaucracy thing, right? That's what we have for dealing with immigrants, isn't it? That we have some kind of bureaucratic hierarchical system that's kind of pushing out solutions to them. And if we actually wanted to do what you say, like engage them and enable them, we'd have to actually kind of change the structure of that organization totally, wouldn't we, to get that kind of user input and so forth. And that also would require us to kind of deal with complexity, right? All these people who are actually contributing. So I guess that idea of kind of structural change, I think.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay,
I noticed that John Mortimer has a hand up, but unfortunately we have to get going. If we'll have time at the end, we'll come back to this. Okay, so please excuse us. Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, John, but we'll get you in there hopefully in a minute. Okay, so thank you. So, I mean, why do wicked problems arise? And I'd like to summarize this with a quote from Drs. Laura and Derek Cabrera, who are experts in research methods and systems thinking at Cornell University. And their quote is, "Wicked problems result from the mismatch between how the real world systems work and how we think they work." Now, so what about this mismatch? This mismatch is called the complexity gap. And so why do we have it? There are many systemic challenges that can trace their roots to big transitions in society, and things like urbanization, new technology, to kind of education. And these are kind of all challenging the current institutions that are dealing with them. The institutions were designed for one set of problems in another era, and they're now being tasked with, I guess, coming up with solutions to quite different challenges in a different context. And an example of this might be kind of mental health services that were designed for a small minority of people, but actually they're dealing with systemic and widespread depression and anxiety in much larger numbers. This is kind of the reason that systemic challenges are characterized by a structural mismatch between the institutions, the context that these institutions work in, and the needs that these institutions meet. And they reveal fundamental issues about the purpose of the actual system and how it is organized to serve society. So therefore, the kind of solutions that are designed in organization silos don't work, and fundamentally kind of systems innovation is needed to meet these kind of systemic challenges. So one example of this complexity gap that perhaps we can relate to is the food system, and more locally here in Singapore. So after the Asian financial crisis and the impact of the food on the food system, the Singapore government did realise that kind of importing food and that kind of diversification strategy wasn't sufficient to achieve food security here. So, I mean, with an evolving strategy of kind of diversification, of contract farming to other people, to kind of having overseas food production zones overseas, and using food substitutes. These are just some of the things that they did. They learned their lessons in 2008, but I mean, even the recent pandemic in 2020 has kind of highlighted the vulnerabilities of the current approach. And even with the goal of 30 by 30, as most of us will know, that even in this model, food security is kind of is much more complex, and it's an interplay of forces like our relationship to food waste, soil degradation in the region, and kind of at a global level. So it's more than just an issue of supply and demand. So essentially, why is it so difficult? I mean, the underlying systems just weren't designed for this paradigm of volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world that we currently live in. And the problems evolved, but our thinking didn't. And we've been applying more reductionist thinking and fragmented thinking to these highly complex problems. These complex problems need to be solved with understanding the interrelated, interdependent and dynamic nature of the system in question. Because these kind of systemic challenges will cross public, private and civic boundaries. And so they need a different kind of thinking. So if wicked problems arise from the mismatch in how we perceive real world systems work and how they actually work, this quote says that systems thinking aims to resolve this mismatch. So a great promise there, and we're excited about this body of work that we've been sort of introduced to. So we've got one kind of last Slido for this part of the session, and we'd like to ask you to choose one of the two statements that resonates the most with you. And the first is, the idea or notion of systems innovation is interesting, but. And the second statement is, the idea or notion of systems innovation is, and then the idea of systems innovation is interesting, but. So two very different sentences, and please choose ones that you feel resonate with you. We're seeing the results. Please do answer. It's okay to have a but. Of course, it's okay to have a but, and it's okay to have to answer and as well. And that's great that we're seeing more that people are saying is interesting and rather than a but. And what we'd like to do is actually, we're going to put you into breakout rooms just for 5 minutes. And what we'd like you to do, hopefully you come across, although we've got 86% who are saying it's interesting, and you come across a couple of other people who you're happy to kind of share a bit more about what you're hearing here and why the idea is either interesting and or interesting but. It will just be a few minutes, and then we'll just kind of come back and share back very briefly. We've still got a lot to get through for this section, so don't drop off. We've got an amazing guest of honor afterwards who has this real kind of application to system thinking that we'll hear more about. So we're just going to breakout rooms for up to 5 minutes, and don't feel shy. We'd love to hear from each of you within those rooms. So do I have to do this breakout room?
So Bjorn is on the side. Okay. Most people out to the rooms or not?
I think
so. I've already opened the rooms, Marissa.
Great, thanks, Jacqueline. Thank you. So everyone should be going into the breakout room. Oops, everyone. We've dropped a few.
Okay. Yeah, do you want to join?
We're not going anywhere, are we?
No, we're not going anywhere.
Okay. There's some people who are still also here.
That's okay. They can
are you timing 5 minutes or maybe less even?
We can do less.
Please join some of the rooms to have a conversation, because we unfortunately can't let everyone share with everyone. So this is a good way to enable people to share whatever they have.
We just had another person join here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We still see some people not joining, right?
Yeah, I think what's happened is
they're probably just listening in or not.
Well, because not everyone goes to the room that I asked them to go to, or like they haven't actually joined. So
okay.
Yeah.
Let's keep, I mean, whoever else is in the main room with us, can we have a conversation? So if you stop sharing your screen for a minute, Anna.
Oh yeah, that would be good.
And then we can have a chat with whoever is here.
Who's here? Stefan's asked for help. Sorry.
Quite a few people. Hi, is anyone here really wanting to get into a breakout room and for some reason has been kicked out? Okay, it might be that they are not at their computers. So I think it's fine.
Oh, okay.
You can send me to breakout room if you want.
Yeah, let me try and send you to a room.
Also Martin looks like he wants to go.
Yeah, my room was empty, so that's why I'm just back. Also, like the chat function is disabled just for information. Maybe that's on purpose, but that's why there people can't.
Can we chat? Can we put the chat on at this stage now?
But
I think you can, Marissa. You click on security. I'm enabling chat.
Okay,
yeah,
sure,
sorry, I'm struggling with the breakout room situation. Like,
it's okay. It's okay. We've got a couple more people just joined us.
Yeah.
So we were just talking, Martin, about wicked problems. Are you familiar with these?
Yeah, I studied public policy, so it's all about wicked problems. My favorite wicked problem, the worst wicked problem, is climate change, and I think the most interesting solution for that would be circular economy, and systems innovation is right in between. So I don't want to hug too much space, but that's what I think about. And
in many ways, they're very similar. I mean, I think systems innovation is about changing the structure of systems from kind of linear to kind of non-linear, right? And that's what the circular economy thing is about. Also, I think it's just one very good example of systems innovation, or one very tangible, concrete one, because we know it's all about non-linear circles, from lines to circles, and that's really what we talk about, structural change in systems. You know, that's what it's about. So I think, I mean, it's one that a lot of people can relate to very easily, as opposed to what Stefan was talking about, kind of trying to change organizations, which is not as kind of straightforward as recycling cups and stuff. Yeah.
We're getting people asking for help in the breakout room, but I don't know how to help them.
Yeah. This is why I never do breakout rooms. They always end in a bit of a mess.
Which
I think
asking for help?
Yeah, I've said just 2 more minutes, so we're going to be bringing people back soon anyway. I think what's happened is sometimes not everyone joins, and so a person might find themselves alone, and it's a bit of a challenge to move people around.
This is, I like this quote here. This characterized breakout rooms. Every single breakout room I've done, I don't think anyone knows what they are meant to do in a breakout room. That's always my experience. People get there.
It is. Well, I mean, I thought I was quite clear at the start.
It's Harvey. It's Harvey here. I don't know if you can hear me.
Hi, Harvey.
The instructions are very unclear. I'm really sorry, but you need to facilitate those breakout rooms, because nobody knew quite what the question was. I was alone in my room. And then in the other room that I was joining, nobody was saying anything, because I don't think anybody quite knew what we were meant to be discussing. I'm really sorry. I run quite a lot of these things. So I just think maybe the questions a bit clearer next time would help, because I didn't really understand what we were discussing. I have no experience of systems innovations, so I couldn't have helped. So we were waiting for somebody else to take the lead, so that didn't happen. So I think that might be an overall experience.
I think that's always that you got to be super simple with what you're doing, otherwise people go off in 1,000 directions. Like, that's my experience in every breakout room I've been. I thought it was pretty simple, but I'd go even simpler, like 10 times simpler, and then you'll get something good. Yeah.
So my apologies for that if I wasn't clear on the instructions.
It's okay.
I find almost always it's better, more productive to have a group conversation, unless you got a really smaller group, and they know a lot about what they're doing, and you got not an introductory session like this. I find it doesn't work so well. But.
Okay, are we bringing people back from the breakout?
Yeah, when we bring people back.
Okay, so have we got everyone back? Yes. Possibly.
Not sure. 10 more seconds, Marissa.
Okay.
Rooms will close in 10 seconds.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we've got, hey, Chris, good to see you here. Do you have we've been talking about wicked problems. Chris, do you have an example of one of these?
Well, I guess
too many, it sounds like.
Plastics for sure, I think, is probably my favorite one to deal with, where, it does so many good things for us, but we just make an absolute mess with them. So, and deal with massive.
That's what you're tackling in Bangkok, right? With the design lab. Yeah. How's it going?
Okay.
Any breakthroughs there?
Well, I've got interesting news. I'm starting social enterprise where we're going to do waste to value stuff, taking secondhand materials and other waste and producing socially valuable products. So hopefully we'll have some news on that in the next month or so. But making good progress right now.
Good.
Nice.
I think.
Do we have everyone back? Yeah. Okay. So sorry, I got some feedback that my instructions weren't very clear. It was just really for you to discuss more with the other people in the room around the idea of systems thinking being interesting or systems thinking being interesting, and we thought we'd have kind of some opposing ideas to talk about. So my apologies if that wasn't so clear in my instructions. So I guess thinking about these wicked problems, systems innovation, I want to introduce the next guest, who I hope is still here. It's a bit later where he is. So this is a man I have spent more than one night with in a yurt in the middle of the field in Wales about 10 years ago. And there's not that many men I can say I've done that with. So I would like to take the opportunity to introduce Bjorn Lowe. Nothing untoward, his wife was there and so was my husband. For those of you who don't know Bjorn, he's based in Singapore. And he is the CEO and founder of Edible Garden City. So Singapore has always been known as a garden city where the streets are lined with trees and there's greenery pretty much almost everywhere you go, at least centrally and kind of as you go out as well in large swathes. But that's kind of a pretty big achievement considering that Singapore is just 728 square kilometers. And has a population of 5.7 million. So Bjorn is the CEO and, as I said, founder of Edible Garden City, and their mission is to kind of, I guess, make the city more than the garden it is. So with that, I'll introduce Bjorn, and I would love for Bjorn to share more about his journey and kind of systems change.
Hi everyone, thank you for the opportunity to share, and I feel excited to be in a room full of system change experts, and just reliving the system change journey that we just went through. So we are a social enterprise in urban farming based in Singapore. We've been around for the last 9 years. What was actually a simple idea of wanting to farm in Singapore became, I guess, something that I never expected became, and within that journey, there were many pivots that happened. And it wasn't because it was very much planned. It was we were able to piece together various opportunities and saw a system change opportunity there. So I'm an Ashoka Fellow. So as part of that fellowship, I went through the Ashoka Globalizer earlier last year, which was a system change journey. So I'll be sharing a little bit of what we did. The slides are a little bit dense, so I will just really go through it, but I want to give you a gist of what we went through in our system change. So here are the slides. Just give me a second. All right, here we go. So we promote urban farming via garden design, food production, and education. So these are really our 3 pillars. And over the last 9 years, we've built 143 of these gardens. We have a 31,000 square feet production space, and we have reached out to schools and organizations all around Singapore. And really, the initial vision was just to farm, not in the city, but in Singapore, which was very landlocked. But the challenges and constraints pushed me into the urban space and identifying these underutilized space. So what we saw was that actually urban farming has the potential to change the community. And we are able to use urban farms to create social change, to create community impact, and also environmental impact. The space we have was very fragmented. I think when we started, we didn't have one farm or one space because we just couldn't afford rent. We were two men with one van, driving around, building gardens for people. And that was a strategy that was happened by chance, but in
Bjorn?
Sorry.
Sorry, Bjorn, can you switch screens? Apparently you're showing the other one, not the presentation.
Can you see that now?
Everybody can see?
You can see the presentation, but we also see your next slide. Well, I see both.
The notes kind of format.
Is this better?
Maybe in the presentation.
Try full screening. Try to full screen that and see. No, might be better the other way. Yeah, without the full screen.
Yeah. Okay.
Apologies for that.
No problem.
Yeah, that's good.
So I guess this just in a nutshell, it's the impact that we have made over the last 9 years, which was a lot by chance. If I go down, so the work we do is in urban agriculture, but what we found actually was that a lot of the work that we have done was to activate underutilized space within Singapore. Singapore is very land scarce, and agriculture is only allocated to 1% of our land. So we find very diverse spaces or interesting spaces like rooftops, converting them into fruit gardens, underutilized spaces, putting in different philosophies like closed loop farming, engaging the mental adults with mental challenges to be part of our team as a social employment model. So what we really did in that was to create a model that was just not about food production, but really beyond that. And a lot of the work done in that was in urban design. And what we have seen over the last 9 years was that with the work that was done, we were able to slowly change mindsets within the political ecology of Singapore, and also encourage some form of change in policies on how they were going to use state land for urban agriculture. So today, if state land was to be converted to urban farming uses, they will require the urban farms to employ people with mental challenges or elderly, provide programs for the community, and also adhere to environmental protocols. So in a way, that for us was quite a big shift from just being farmers to then urban policy change makers. Now, the policy in Singapore then was the ecology was also very encouraging for these kind of system change to take place, because we already have a very strong history of greening for the city, and so these were very helpful in actually building the platform for change. What we found over the last 2 to 3 years of our work was that there was a big marginalized group that didn't have access to what we were doing. A lot of the work that we were doing were for hotels, restaurants, property developers. While we employ people with disabilities, we still felt that there was a big group marginalized. So we started to look deeper into how to create broader social impact and system change within the community. And through that work with the National Parks Board of Singapore, we actually found that there is scientific evidence that through the process of working in the garden, whether it's a food garden or urban farm, the elderly were able to actually reduce their stress biomarkers within the body. These were done in collaboration with NUS, and these biomarkers were tracked prior to and after intervention. And this was a pivotal point for us, because it is then moving urban agriculture into not just food production, but also in delivering medical and healthcare and mental wellness service to the community. And what we did in our system change journey strategy was to really look at how do we pivot from small cumulative impact in multiple places into one big system change, and that is care farming, because we are able to then address the food system and also medical care delivery or mental wellness delivery services. So of course, as part of that, we did analysis on the dementia population in Singapore, because the scientific evidence was very clear in reducing ILP6 biomarkers levels within the participants, which then means that it reduces inflammation in the body, which dementia is one of the causes of inflammation in the body. So we looked at the market sizing of dementia patients and the potential growth. We found that social isolation was a big issue, that actually once an elderly is socially isolated, they fall into a spiral of illness as well. So these are some of the critical juncture that we identified, and we built a roadmap on how we were going to achieve this through mental engagements, physical movement, social synergy, nutrition knowledge, and psychological well-being. And this is a kind of roadmap that we have been kind of following to pivot our business into this space. Again, these are some of the sort of key elements that we picked up, accessibility for people in wheelchair, for the elderly to access these urban farms and planter beds, bright colors for dementia patients. So we start to kind of put in the mechanics of how we're going to deliver this on the longer term. And one of the big portion we found is actually sensorial memory recall. A lot of us, if we do grow up in an environment where we're surrounded by the kampong or the farm, when you do grow old, you do remember about your younger days, and this is quite an important point on mental wellness. We are able to get the elderly into that. That could help them very much so. So we did another market sizing to see how we should sort of penetrate the market. We looked at going into care homes, elder care service industry, but this was done prior to us actually doing it, and I can tell you for now that it's actually quite difficult. So we have changed our strategy quite a bit from this. But I think what is important is how we progress in that system change journey. We know for a fact that if we were to kind of IP everything and kind of restrict access to the information and the work that we do, the impact will be very limited. So we have chose to actually, if you look at the last portion, the open source training, is to once we establish the framework, is to open source this model to the world, which I believe is what a lot of social entrepreneurs do, is to actually create impact by open sourcing, and this is one of the strategies that we were going for. Yep. So we looked at sort of the diverse stakeholders and who was important to drive that, and then we built up plan pilots of what we were going to do. So it's just a bit heavy, the slides, but it gives you an idea of the amount of work that we did for the system change and the journey. But I can tell you for a fact that 50% of it has not really come into play, because who could have foresaw COVID? That really sort of pushed back a lot of things. But what we have now worked on is something that is a bit broader, because we need to go back and sort of rationalize some of the scientific evidence. So we are currently working with NUS to further do research with the elderly on the farm to ensure the scientific data is strong. But on the longer term, we hope that this will change the healthcare system. I think, put it in a simple way, if an elderly person goes to a clinic and say that I am depressed or I'm sick, that if the GP sort of diagnose him as mildly depressive, instead of dispensing him a course of antidepressant, he will dispense him a course of urban agriculture, and that is how we hope to change that system, and we are moving towards that, but it's probably going to take a long time before we get there. I'd like to share one last quote. I know I have a very tight time, which is something that we use a lot, and it's really sort of captures the essence of urban agriculture. It's the ultimate goal of farming is not the growing of crops, but the cultivation and perfection of human beings. And this progress that we are making in our journey, this really encapsulates that journey. And I hope I've been able to share a bit of insight of what we have done. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Bjorn. Thank you so much for sharing that. It changes and evolves every time I hear more about the work that you're doing. So it is fascinating. We had some questions lined up for you. One was, did you start with systems change in mind? But I think you already answered that at the start. And obviously we've heard that you've had to kind of change and pivot and adjust multiple times based on many of the things that have happened. I guess one of the other questions we had prepared for you was to ask you kind of within the system, the kind of lots of diverse actors and people and institutions. And so which to you, I mean, you've kind of changed the urban farming and the urban kind of landscape quite a lot in that sense. Which of the nodes do you think were kind of most pivotal that enabled you to kind of shift the system, so to speak? Hello? Bjorn? Oh. Oh, you're still on mute. Oh, you're on mute, Bjorn. Sorry, can you?
Sorry, I missed 80% of that because
okay. Sorry, I said kind of you've changed the urban farming landscape and Singapore and the land use policies quite significantly. You've been able to kind of shift a lot of that, right? Compared to the 1% that you said was initially assigned to that. Our question was kind of in terms of the various actors and institutions and people involved or as nodes in the system, which do you think were the most pivotal that enabled the shift in the system that you kind of either influenced or you had access to? Or
well, yeah, I think that there's so many diverse stakeholders within this ecosystem. One big one definitely is the government. I think in the early days, we tend to avoid the government as much as we can because they could shut us down like tomorrow because of food safety concerns or because urban farming is still something new. You're growing in the city, there might be pollution, that might be lead poisoning. There's so many reasons that could shut us down. So I tend to avoid them quite a bit until they came and sat down and chatted and say, oh, what kind of support do you need? And what they did actually was quite pivotal for us because they allowed us to continue what we did without putting policies or restrictions on top of us because they wanted to see where this was going and using that as a basis to, okay, this is perhaps how we can design policies to encourage the industry to grow because and that was quite important because without that we would not have gotten that far and we probably would throw in the towel if we face roadblocks after roadblocks. So they were quite instrumental. I think the other really instrumental portion is stakeholders and partners would be a lot of the clients that we work with. A lot of them support us, because they believe in the movement. They believe in in doing a part for the environment, a part for society, not because they are trying to save costs by trying to grow their own food for the restaurant, because it just doesn't work that way. I think they had space, they had some spare resources, and they were happy to support the movement. So we played a big part in propping up the narrative of urban agriculture and food sustainability, not only in Singapore, but it was a global push and a global effort to get food sustainability and urban farming, on top of people's mind, and it stays, and it helped a lot.
Great. Thank you. Anna, do we have time for one more question?
Thank you. I'm afraid not. We only have 10 minutes left.
Okay.
So
right.
Thank you very much, Bjorn. It's really fascinating. So I apologize, but we do need to move on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bjorn. And anyone, I'm sure Bjorn's quite a well-known figurehead for this movement. So I'm sure you can hear lots of his stories in other channels as well. So thanks, Bjorn, for sharing that with us.
So let me start the sharing again. Whoops. Bear with me. Okay. We're done with this one. Thank you. So I think from Bjorn sharing, this really seems to me that systems innovation really requires new ways of thinking and new ways of organizing. And this brings us nicely to a little bit more about the hub and what we're planning to do here. And so through a process of synthesis, what will follow there are a lot of different ideas and methods and methodologies that exist out there, and they're all scattered through different disciplines. And so through a process of synthesis, we think that the following is an accessible way of working towards system innovation. And so let me start with systems thinking. When we see a systematically dysfunctioning system, then the problem is likely not out there, but rather it is because of the way we think and the way we see the world. So if we start, therefore, we believe that systems thinking starts with personal transformation. And that means really developing oneself with curiosity, developing deep curiosity, developing critical and reflective thinking, developing ability to see systems and become a systems leader, to have this ecosystem view of the world. But when we have a system, do we immediately jump and try to fix it? Well, we better not, because what we actually need to do is to gain deep understanding into the system and all the different agents and linkages within that system. And so the way to go about it is to see system as a holistic entity in a way, and then go and map all the different agents and linkages between it to establish a common understanding of that system. And that in turn will also show us or enable us to see the leverage points, which altogether will also bring a consensus for the necessary action. And the next steps would be about systems changing. And many of us working in the change area, a lot of the change theories exist out there, but they're mostly linear and logical, and they're based on simplified assumptions about the system that is organization that is knowable, it is predictable, and it is controllable, therefore allowing us to design the outcomes we want. When we're talking about a system approach to change, we're talking about enabling new interconnections between the different agents and the emergence of something new. So fundamentally, it is a very different approach. And for systems building, the impetus for successful systems innovation does not rely on one single organization or on an individual. What we really need is a diverse set of actors working inside organizations or outside those organizations. We really need to put together various constellations that go way beyond the traditional ways of running innovation systems in organization. And these all areas that we in a hub intend to learn together, evolve with, and implement collaboratively. So Marissa, would you like to elaborate more a little bit about what the hub is or maybe isn't?
Sure. Thanks, Anna. So, I mean, we have 5 minutes left, so I'll not go into too much detail, but just to kind of go into it. I mean, the broad innovation ecosystem in Singapore and the region is quite vibrant. But we just wanted to kind of, I guess, lay out some of the things to make it a bit clearer, because you've heard a lot today about this hub that we're looking to set up, and it's part of a kind of a global network. And so, I mean, it's not, in a sense, kind of like a hackathon or an events company, and it's kind of not a co-working space. And even though we may be doing things together that involve some of the kind of activities under this isn't actually what the hub is. It's definitely not a place for the kind of best in class or best practice. What we want is kind of a diverse range of people, and cognitive diversity, I think, is really important. So it's for people who are beginners, who have different perspectives and things like that. And it's not really sort of a networking club, although that may be a fantastic byproduct of building your network. It's not primarily a place for that necessarily, although that's also, you know, connecting with people is a really important part of change. But what we feel it is something that is experimental. So it's not a predictable, yes, we know exactly what's going to happen. It's something that we'll learn as we go. It's learning with action, so it's not just learning and keeping that separate to building momentum for real change. It's capacity building, and I think a lot of the work that Joss and the team have put together is amazing resource for building a much bigger capacity globally for learning systems, thinking systems change, and the systems innovation. And one of the things that's really important, as Bjorn also alluded to in his talk, was that it's open source. So there's a vast amount of information that is really accessible on the current platform that Joss has created. And it is part of a network and a lot of stuff is still being added to and developed and is ongoing. So it's open source and global, which is a really sweet spot to be in. And it's really a place for us to share and exchange. So to learn from one another. And I think people now realize that you're kind of learning and unlearning and relearning constantly. So it's hard to keep up, and there's no kind of static set of information that we can necessarily rely on for too long. So that's a much kind of, I guess, much more kind of tangible, in a way to define what we're seeing for the hub. And what it could be is really where we want to involve people who are here today and anyone else who might be interested in being part of this. There is a hub in Singapore, which is obviously where we're kind of speaking for. But we also want to make sure that you could imagine that it's co-created here, but also in a wider context of the hubs everywhere else. So we'd invite you to get in touch with us and join the community, join the platform, and things like that. So what would be next? Well, here are actually where we currently have hubs, and I think Joss, you set these up in the last year, less than a year, and we're sprouting across the globe as we speak. So do look out for the hub in your local area or your local geography. I don't think you necessarily have to be based somewhere to be part of one. I think some people straddle more than one geography outside of the constraints of the pandemic. And I think there are more coming as the weeks go by. So please look out for the hubs and the information. We've got our next event, which is on Wednesday, the 14th of April, around the same time in Singapore. We will share that later on. The information is available on the platform and will be available on LinkedIn as well. If you would like to join the platform first, you can scan the QR code. And we would really appreciate if you do scan that QR code. We have a couple of questions that we'd like you to answer, just based on the session you had today and what you've heard, how you feel about it, and also how you think you could get involved with the hub itself. We want people from, as you said, different domains, different professions, different perspectives, that cognitive diversity, but also to involve as many people as possible in building what we see something very powerful in terms of changing systems on a much larger scale. So that's what we have for today. I don't know if I've missed anything. Anna, Joss, Jacqueline, Jan, Garrett, have I missed anything? Do you want to add anything more to what we have to say, other than thank you everyone for coming, and sorry if there are technical problems?
No, we just posted the 2 links there in the sidebar, one for the next event and the other one for the questionnaire. Yeah, that was great. Really good to get started. I'm looking forward to the next one already. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank all of you.
Likewise. And if you have trouble getting into any of those links, you can always reach out over LinkedIn on the event page as well.
Yeah, thank you everyone. If anyone's willing to turn on the camera so we can do a quick screen grab, that would be amazing. I'm sorry if anyone's been missed out on there. We're really excited to have such a large number of people register and interested in what we're doing, and we are just getting started, so it's really open for everyone to join in and help co-create something that's meaningful for, I guess, society at large rather than necessarily the individual. Yeah, thank you everybody for coming, and do sign up for the next event, and please be open about the feedback on the form for on the platform. We'd love to hear what you thought about it, and if we delivered an experience you could enjoy. Sorry,
no, and I think we promised those who are willing to stay a little bit, and if they have more questions or want to share more, then we're open to that. I think John Mortimer, Mr. Mortimer, was the one who wanted to share. So please feel free to, those who are here and open to stay, do stay.
John, did you have a question or a statement?
It wasn't so much a question. I think it was based on when someone said, I think it was about how can we use systems thinking? And I find that systems thinking in the public sector it can design services that are completely different to how a service is. At the moment, public sector services are very bureaucratic and they're very structured and they're very transactional. And on top of that, recently, there's a lot of digital work, service design happening in the public sector. Now, a lot of that service design actually doesn't improve the service. It just makes it look nicer. You kind of need something like systems thinking to link all of that together, and you come up with a service that is more person-centered rather than centered around the legislation and the administration and the control that a local authority wants to have on its services. And it's especially true when you're dealing with people in need, homeless people, people that need housing, people that need some kind of support, people that haven't paid their tax on time because they haven't got money, etc. All of these are complex problems that are often in the public sector are often used. They often have very simple transactional services to try and deal with these, and they're completely inappropriate, and it drives up a huge amount of waste and a huge amount of frustration. So by using systems thinking, you can come up with completely differently designed services that are much more effective and actually help people instead of kind of not helping them. So that's what I wanted to mention.
Thank you, John. I don't know if I can sort of ask another question on top of that. I guess, I mean, what you're saying is that the system is designed for one thing, but the people designing these services are kind of disconnected from that. And often I think that there's this tension between what an organization wants versus what the people need or really want, right? How do you think you reconcile those opposing, often multiply opposing kind of imperatives or requirements?
That's actually a surprisingly easy question to answer, and it's the thing that I always do. It's probably the most important thing I do, which is when you engage with citizens and actually ask them what their issues and problems are, you come up with the purpose of the service that you then are there to deliver. And when you come up with that purpose is defined by the citizen, not the organization. And that's the trick. Once that happens, and everyone goes, oh yeah, maybe that is our purpose, and all that organization and all the stakeholders, because you've got all these other stakeholders within the organization, they have to use that same purpose. They have to use this clear purpose. And as soon as you do that, you have a focus for all of these different groups to now start to come together. So the answer is actually quite straightforward. Making that happen is sometimes easy, but it can be surprisingly easy because people have never actually thought of it that way. And to me, that's a fundamental concept of systems thinking, that when you bring that to the table, it's almost like, oh, why didn't we think of this before? A homeless person, yeah, actually the purpose is to deal with them. They think homeless people need housing. They don't need housing. The problem is that for some reason, they can't live in a normal way. The biggest problem with homeless people, certainly in this country, in England, is mental health issues, and it's drug addiction and things like that. Those are the things that need solving. Not if you put them in a property, within 2 months they'll be out again. So it's that kind of focus on what's the true purpose of what we're here to solve.
Goes back to what the gentleman before was saying about immigrants, or migration, and having to change the structure of the system so as to incorporate their capacities and their interest, as you say. I think it also ties in with what Stefan's talking about in terms of bureaucracies too, having to change the structure of those to actually be able to integrate the capacities of everyone and the users and so forth. So I think it is that thing of systems change, isn't it? Because we've designed our organizations in a particular kind of linear way to push things out. And if you want to get that kind of engagement from everyone, you really have to change the way that things organized.
Sorry, I'm just reading a comment here. David said, I think you're raising the need for the identification of causality, root causes, John. David, did you want to say more on that?
No, I think that sums it up. I think that the application of budgets and focus and time and resources to things that are at the end of a system, that are outcomes, of course, will not be as efficient. Of course, the challenge is at a multi-segment level. The identification of root causes is not so straightforward. Like John gave a good example of mental health or addictions, vices, etc. Those are all very, very obvious, but at so many different types of segments at a governmental level, I'm sure it is challenging, and you'd need specific skill sets to identify different root causes, and you'd have to bring in behavioral psychology and economics at scale. And I'm just sure it's just incredibly complex and very exciting to solve. Perhaps machine learning and AI at some point with additional senses.
Can I just say one thing? When I do this in public sector, we use exactly the same people to work in the new way as they did in the old way. So it just needs retraining. It doesn't need anything particularly fancy. We're not talking about sophisticated mental health issues. We're very often talking about low levels of anxiety. We're talking about befriending. We're talking about having a purpose in life. We're talking about getting people together so they can socialize. We always use the same people in the council to solve the problems in the new way. We never need to, hardly ever, sorry, not quite. Sometimes you need specialist support and then you pull them in, but that's not all the time.
Yeah, I very much agree with it, because as I mentioned in the presentation, right, when we have systemically problematic occurrences in the system, the problem is not out there and someone out there is not going to solve it. It is first and foremost looking back into us and our own thinking that created that system. And I very much agree with John. It is the same people, but just thinking differently and seeing things differently. And therefore our actions will change as a result of that. So I agree with that.
Bjorn, I wanted to ask you something. Just, are you still here? I can see your picture. I'm not sure if you're actually still here or not. Or yeah, I guess a lot of, as kind of more able-bodied people within the room, I'm assuming, right? A lot of assumptions I know around people with mental illness or physical challenges. How did you overcome those kind of stigmas or those kind of misconceptions about the elderly and their kind of and those with kind of learning disabilities as well in the work that you've done?
Well, because we wanted to really look at the marginalized group of people, and we very much started with the autistic spectrum disorder group. early on, as we were kind of working within that sector, building gardens for special needs schools and putting in a curriculum with an idea of wanting to employ them based when they do come out from school. But we found that really challenging because of stigma from the parents of farming as a job. It may not be suitable and might be too hard. It's too far away. So we tend to bring it down and kind of look at the good side of their disability for the autistic adults when they can do very repetitive tasks. And farming, there's a lot of that. So seed sowing, harvesting, and we put them into that kind of training, and we're able to employ them later down in our journey. For the elderly people, we started off by kind of working with a lot of social work groups, identified elderly males as those typically socially isolated, and brought them down into the garden. And we saw a transformation within them. So we were able to identify these groups by chance, almost working with these groups, social groups.
Great, thank you. It's not easy in Singapore. I don't know for those of you who aren't based here. There is a hugely kind of growing Asian population here as well, and there's a very, I think, traditional kind of mindset around kind of being outside, being, as Bjorn said, being outside in the farm, dirty and things like that. So to then subject people to these kind of conditions may seem quite challenging, and I guess a change in perception is definitely required rather than necessarily the physical state. And I think the change of perception is the second half of change that's often less easy to deal with. The physical is actually a lot easier in sense of if you're changing a physical environment or a product, but actually changing the mindset, which is what Anna was talking about earlier, is the much longer term work, I think, for most of us. We are at 6:45. Sorry, does someone want to speak?
Hello, can I have a question, please? Actually, I'm interested about the mental health problem. So during my study in Osaka University, I once have like a conflict with other international student from Thailand. We are in the same laboratory. Actually, I'm not at that time. I didn't understand much about what is mental health and what kind of people with the mental health or the stigma about the mental health at that time. But during at that time, like I just treat every people like equally, like we are international people here, so we need to like live what we are doing. We need to do like our job is our main task, and don't bother any people like doing so another thing. And then there's a moment like I have a conflict with other international student for Thailand, and I didn't know, like I defend myself based on what proof that I have. And in the end he cried and he tell me like he has some kind of like a mental problem, and he has to talk with his psychiatrist and so on. And that time I'm freeze, like I don't know how to like react, because like usually like I treat people based on like my professional, my competitiveness and so on, but I'm like talking like that one. But at that time I didn't know like what should I do, and I didn't like I'm speechless at the time, like do I need to defend myself much further or I need to stop? And I just like at the time I stop and I need to comfort him. But the question is like how we can identify people with the mental health at early stage before we are like doing this kind of like much further like debate or like this hard discussion. Because at that time like I cannot like identify people with the mental health problem, because I don't know what kind of mental health at that time. So like I just treat people like what I can, because like I think myself like I like this is my right and you are like doing something bad to me. So I defend myself like in front of my professor. But after that I feel like so sad, and until now I'm still thinking about that kind of person. Like I'm like what I'm thinking about, like what happened if these people like thinking too much about what I'm saying before, and he got something like yeah, something bad. Is there any kind of issues in Singapore, or like how we can like identify and communicate with people? Maybe I also have some kind of mental health problem, maybe because like my tendency is to defend myself, that kind of thing. But I would like to, from now on, I would like to learn about and contribute into this kind of topic about mental health. And since then, I learned that many international students in Japan or many foreigners in Japan also facing the same problem, especially in the city.
Thanks, Agus. Sorry, Joss, do you want to answer the question?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting one, isn't it? It's what these kind of ideas should be able to help us approach. We've kind of ignored it or not wanted to deal with it for a long time. And COVID situations changed things a lot in that respect, hasn't it? Like almost a lot of people now. It's not isolated to a small population in society. You know, a lot of young people, a lot of people are now suffering varying degrees of mental health, as you say. It's being recognized more and more. So it's definitely something we should be thinking about, and of course it's not an easy one, right? It's a very difficult challenge, but I think that's one we should put on our agenda, Marissa, right? For our little hub here in Singapore and other locations. How do we? And also kind of moving into the digital world also, and the challenges, and also the capacity, moving into that world and the new kind of a psychological environment that it puts us in. You know, we're seeing that, aren't we, with social media, but also the possibility to capture information and data about people and kind of understand them in new ways, right? And yeah, people are talking a lot now about the potential of data to analytics and so forth. You can start to kind of track people's behavior over time, and when they're approaching you know, periods of mental instability or so forth, they start to exhibit regular kind of patterns that lead to kind of behavior like that, and then they pick up again and so forth. So it's an interesting one to explore, both with the new ideas but new kind of technological means and data and so forth. A lot of potential there, and also the fact that society is opening up to it and recognizing the costs of it too. I think that's part of it also. I think that's a really big open discussion we should be having as we go forwards, right? I don't have the answers to that. Let's keep it going.
I think maybe if I can say something, just as you were sharing, my thinking was, well, we didn't used to have so many mental challenges, and then that brings about this thought, well, what gives rise to this? Why people, right? So we're looking from the systems lens on the things. There's something that there's a structure, fundamental structure, that creates such conditions for people to experience or have increases in mental health issues. So I think if we are systems thinker and system innovators, then yeah, there is a place to address the outcomes of it. But if we look deeper into the structure, what are the structural elements that we can impact to change that? I think in the long run, that's probably something that will work. Oh, John. Yeah, please.
Is it okay to just say something quick? And I wanted to make sure that we leave this in a good place. So I find that probably one of the secrets of helping people who have, let's say, low levels of mental health issues, not necessarily serious ones, it's actually, and it points to your point, Anna, and it points to one of the comments on here about industrial age and seeing people as part of a machine. The secret to unlocking it is just engaging with someone and listening to them. And you listen to them for as long as they need to talk, and you don't interfere, and you just listen. That is the beginning of helping somebody. Now, none of us are experts in sorting out mental health issues, and we're not meant to be. But that is the beginning, and it's just treating other people as human beings. And that's one of the areas where digital has made big problems, where they assume that people can somehow engage with digital parts of the system, and they lose that connection and understanding, because that's to do with far deeper things. And don't feel bad about leaving someone in a situation. The best you can do is listen to them and maybe pat them on the back, and that's it. That may be the only thing they can do. The other thing you might be able to do is point them in a direction that they may be able to get some help. So don't worry too much. And it can be a common fear that maybe we're getting into areas that we feel we're out of our depth in. Well, actually, systems thinking is pointing to the fact that we're humans, and it's actually very often being more about being human.
Very true. I agree to that.
Can I say something just to build on?
Oh, yes.
And Anna, you said that our older generation didn't really have much of a mental problem. I do think they have a lot of mental challenges, but it's just we are living in the age, in the time that we start to really think about everything in a very human approach. And so hence there's such a discussion and dialogue about how to deal with the mental issues, and mental issue becoming more and more of that everyday topic for ordinary people to really understand and try to find a way to tackle. But in our older generation, I don't think they are lucky enough to even have the opportunity and to talk about it.
Yeah, that's very true. And what John said, I mean, because of now we're living this digital life more than one-to-one life, that made it to surface up to almost everyone's daily conversation, So in a way, there is no bad without some good in it. I'm trying to make it into positive there. So yeah, it's a very important conversation. Thank you, Agus, for telling us and raising it. Thanks. Any more?
We hadn't planned to go on for this time. I'm not sure if anyone has dinner commitments or breakfast commitments wherever they are. It's a really interesting discussion, and I think something that could just unfold and unfold. Does anyone else have anything else I would like to share, either an experience or a perspective that perhaps we've not heard today about their work?
Pretty much, I guess, like so I'm coming from a product perspective, and you know, it's nice to hear from everyone, the experts around, and coming from like, you know, not from Singaporean but born Singaporean but overseas, you know, I think for us youngsters it's more like mental health on the burnout, how we actually manage our day-to-day work and also our personal life, and how do we actually, you know, have that time management to actually be sane enough to manage everything, like their kids, their family, you know, personal stuff. It's more like how do we actually have that kind of understanding at the end of the day we are all humans, and that's what you know, the previous person said, like we need to have more listening ears. Not just as a person, but also as a company, as a team. It really bounds to, at the end of the day, so we are all part of the system, and how every day we are trying to innovate ideas, right, to tackle this. So it will be great to know more in depth about the mental health issue, and thanks Agus in terms of like, you know, bringing that up. But yeah, looking forward to hear more topics on that as well, on the discussion. So thanks, Melissa, as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Hannah. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Joss also shared that there is a new, great, really easy to use platform for social engagements. We can continue the conversation there as well. So if you go to www.systeminnovation.net, different groups, please feel free to then connect with people and engage in those.
Change at this station for the Circle Line.
Somebody's on the underground in the UK.
Yeah, I had to mute you, Cynthia, because there was someone is on a train. Shall we call it?
Yeah, And we have questionnaires there, but I'm not sure if we mentioned it. If anybody wants to be more involved in the hub, you're welcome to jump in. And as I shared above, the link for the questionnaire, and just post a comment there if you'd like to be more involved. That'd be great. We welcome that for sure. And we'll get back to you and see what's possible. But yeah, great. We've got next event coming up in a month, and you got the link there for that also. So let's leave it for now and sync again in a month. We'll start our discussion on what systems innovation is, all the ideas, methods, and so forth, as Anna was saying. And that'll hopefully be ongoing. Our plan every month, isn't it? Maybe doing presentations going forwards, so that you guys can learn a lot more about these ideas and tools and all of that stuff. So looking forward to that.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all staying on. Thank you for your listening ears. Thank you for your comments and all the extra material you've provided. And thank you for sharing more about yourselves as well. So we really hope that you'll sign up on the platform and kind of join one of the hubs, either in Singapore or closer to where you are, if you're not in Singapore.
Thank you so
Bye,
much.
Thank you. Have a good
day,
evening.
Good night. Good evening.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Bye.
Stay safe, everyone. That was excellent.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you to
Thanks,
everybody
David.
organizing.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hi, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, Tara.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks and bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you. See you next time. Bye. Please feel free to let us chat among ourselves.
I see that.
Thank you. We're
standing at the door waiting.